What's up? EJK here, and I'm gonna be bringing you guys a TvZ video, mostly about how to deal with ba no how to deal with TvZ on one of the new maps, Catalena. As you guys all know, should know, the IEM Shenzhen replay pack was released earlier today, and with that comes a plethora of different TvZs. And one of the things that I immediately did was to take a look at several TvZ games happening. Actually, I took a look at all of the TvZ games from the replays released from Shenzhen, and then I made a note of the different builds that were used, and just in general, different things that players did to play the map. Now, there were only, looking at my notes, there was one cheese game between Solar and Innovation, the 3-base Roach Baneling bust. Spoilers. And then there was a 3-hatch double Evo Chamber into Muta Baneling game, and then a 2-hatch Muta into Muta Baneling game. So there were 2 macro games and 1 regular game, and out of the 2 macro games, it was pretty textbook standard, although Jaedong decided to go for a faster Spire, and he also went for a different expansion pattern as well. So we'll be taking a look at the different options that the Zerg player has and which third base offers the best advantages for the Zerg player, and what third base is the best for the Terran player to potentially abuse. So without further ado, let's jump into the game. There we go. Well, there we go. I think. No. Okay, let's just do that. Alright, so we got Jaedong in the 9 o'clock position, and we have Tasia in the 12 o'clock position. So the only 2 macro games that came out of the IEM Shenzhen replay pack were 2 Tasia games between Jaedong and Solar, 2 very good Zerg players, most definitely highly ranked on the Korean server. So we're going to take a look at these games in chronological order. Tasia did play versus Jaedong first, and then he played versus Solar in the finals. So the way that Tasia is playing this game, keep in mind that Solar is going to be he's going to be watching this game and taking notes of what Tasia does on this map. And the thing we see out of Tasia is a pretty normal response. It's a Banshee opening into Biomine, and he's going to do that in the second game as well, with slight variations to try to trick the Zerg's scouting into play. One thing to note right here is when you're going for a Reaper expand and you're going for a 12 racks Reaper expand, the barracks is going to finish up in 1 second. So your SCV is going to be done, and this is the time that the Zerg player, if they send their overlords straight in a straight path to your main ramp, or let's say the Zerg player starts over here, they're gonna send their overlord straight to your ramp. Or if the Zerg player starts here, send it straight to your ramp. And that is the, I think, most common scouting pattern. Then the SCV is if you send the SCV around, if you send this SCV and you send them around here, just make a little loop over here before you build your second depot, you'll be able to scout the overlord coming in at this time. So if the Zerg player started here and he sent his overlord in this direction, then if you scouted with your SCV over here, then you would have seen the overlord passing by, so you would have known exactly where the Zerg player started. So that's just a little trick for you guys, so that you don't have to send a scouting SCV out onto the map. It can be pretty annoying, and you just kind of make the build a little bit more efficient. Now, of course, the Zerg player, he could possibly, like, if he starts here, he could send his first overlord over here, and then his second overlord over here. That's a definite possibility, but if you do scout with your SCV and you don't see the Reaper, like you scout over here with your SCV and you don't see the Reaper, or you don't see the overlord, then you can send your Reaper to this area, and there's just a higher percentage that you'll be able to scout the Zerg player first, and that you'll be able to scout the Zerg player fast enough so that you don't have to send an SCV out on the map like what Tasia did. And Tasia, all he did was scout the expansion, and then he went back. He just wanted to know the Zerg's starting location. So we see here Solar opening up with a Jaedong opening up with a speed first opening. Nothing too out of the ordinary, and Tasia's doing his normal Reaper harass. He's adding a second gas because he's going to be going into fast starport play, and good dodging by Tasia. Nice Reaper micro. This map is kind of like a mini version of Heavy Rain because you do have this ledge that you can abuse with the Reapers, and they can do quite a bit of damage if you aren't too careful. I mean, there's a pretty safe path from going here all the way here and sniping any possible drones that go down into the natural, or you can simply swing around and try to hit some drones over here in the mineral line and scare the Zerg player and at least force him to pull his drones or make a building. So we see here Tajia's build. He's opening up with a Viking first. He wants to deny Overlord information. And if we take a look right now, let's wait until the Viking comes out to make the timing better. There we go. So the Viking's out right now. If we take a look at the Zerg player's map vision, and we take a look at his first 6 Overlords, there's 1 Overlord, 2 Overlord, 3 Overlord, 4, 5, and 6. So there's not really going to be a big deviation in where these Overlords are. There might be an Overlord over here, there might be an Overlord over here instead of these 2 locations. But in general, the Zerg player is going to have 1 Overlord over here. This is the best spot for the Zerg player because you get to scout where the natural is going to be. And you're going to have a second Overlord over here-ish to scout the main base. It could be pretty much anywhere here. I think the best place would be to have it here so that you can scout if this gas has been taken and how fast it's been taken as well. So what the Viking does is it eliminates the Zerg's ability to scout. So if we go back to Tajia's view, his Viking unfortunately isn't doing anything. But it's gonna what he should have done with his Viking is go over here and then loop around and then maybe like go over here. Because this is kind of like King Sejong Station right outside your natural base. This is the Overlord positioning that is 100% safe against any non-Viking opening, and it also allows the Zerg player to see exactly what's coming out of your natural ramp. So Jaedong knows exactly what's on the map because he saw these he saw all of these Hellions coming out. He saw the 3 additional Hellions coming out from the natural, and he saw these come out because they're obviously poking the front of the base. So that's just kind of a small little mistake that Tasia made over there. Definitely, this is probably the #1 hotspot that the Overlords are going to be meandering over, and that you want to kind of keep in mind. The Zerg's always going to have vision there unless you get a Viking and clear it out as soon as possible. And then the #2 location would be somewhere over there. And oh, Tasia just barely missing that Overlord, which is kind of unfortunate. So now let's just take a look at Tasia's point of view. So actually, let's take a look at Jaedong's point of view. He's getting a fast layer right after his speed, so his layer's coming before the double evolution chambers. And since Jaedong doesn't know what Tasia is doing, all he sees is, I don't even think he sees a Viking. Okay, he actually sees the starport, so it could be a possible cloak banshee. So he is building 1 spore crawler at the natural. He's only building 1 because by the time that his layer is finished, the cloak banshees will be finished, so that all he has to do is make an overseer, and he'll have 3 queens, and that's plenty to deal. Or actually, it's more than 3 queens. He has 2 queens there. He has 4. He'll have 5 queens, so that there'll be more than enough queens to deal with any possible cloak banshees along with the overseer. And when you have a layer this fast, you don't need to make an overseer. Or I mean, you don't need to make a spore because you'll have the overseer out in the way very fast. Very good by Tasia getting the queen. Okay, there we go. Tasia scouting this third. He didn't see anything. He didn't scout this third. This is the other third base possibility that the Zerg can take. But he did see a gas. Well, that gas doesn't really say anything about it. The Zerg could have 1 gas here and then like another gas here. So Tasia knows at least 2 gases have been taken because he has 1 there and he has 1 there. He's a spore crawler. The biggest tell of what Jaedong is doing is the number of queens and the lack of a third base. So we saw that Tasia was shooting at 2 queens earlier over here. And I'll rewind it back for the visual display. So he's shooting at 2 queens over here. So he knows that Jaedong isn't focusing on creep spread. And the 2 reasons why you don't want to focus on creep spread as a Zerg player is A, you're going to do a Roach Baneling all in. or B, you're going to do a fast layer transition. So either way, by keeping the Reapers and Hellions out here to apply constant pressure, you can constantly poke at the queen count. And now that Tasha sees there's 3 queens, I believe Jaedong brings 1 queen down. Oh, he doesn't. Oh no, the queen just popped out from there. So Jaedong has 3 queens after Tasha killed 1. That means it's a slightly less possibility that's going to be a Roach Baneling all-in, because why would you remake a queen when you're going for a Roach Baneling all-in? And then now Tasha's going to send his 2 Reapers up here for scouting information at about 8:40. He could have done it slightly earlier at closer to 8 minutes, but this timing serves the purpose well. He's able to see that there's a layer and that there's speedlings. And the only reason there's speedlings is because there isn't roaches for a 1/1 attack. So Tasia instantly knows by the looks of seeing both the layer, at least 3 gas is taken, and just speedlings on the map with 0/0 upgrades. He knows that it's not going to be a 1/1 roach timing. He knows that there's no 3-base roach baneling on him because of the layer. So the only possibility left is a spire. So Tasia knows exactly what Jaedong is doing, and he can adapt his play style from here. And we take a look at the map, or we take a look at Tasia's production. He is getting a reactor, blah blah blah, another reactor. He's just adding his infrastructure, getting his 2nd and 3rd barracks, starting his 5 marine production, getting his engineering base going. It's all going to be slightly later because he got both a Viking and a Banshee out in time, or before the evolution chambers. Viking with 3 kills, that's pretty good. And Tasia, alright, so Tasia did end up getting this overlord. He got the overlord that was over here too, and then he got 3rd overlord over there. And if we take a look at Jaedong's vision, we have no idea what Tasia's doing. This is all that Jaedong's seen. So as far as he knows, Tasia could possibly be doing a mech build as well. So that's just kind of the benefits of getting a Viking out really fast and delaying your upgrades. And also Tasia is going to be able to see the 3rd base going down with his Banshee, which is really great. This is an interesting 3rd base location. I don't think I've seen any Zerg player take a 3rd base at that spot specifically. Usually Zerg's players usually take a 3rd base there, and then they'll take their 4th base here or here. But Jaedong opts to take his 3rd base here, and we're going to see in the game how that plays out for Tasia. Basically, by not taking a 3rd base here, you can't easily abuse this ramp by attacking here and then jumping up into the main and then kind of like doing an elevator up and down. There's just one main attack path that Jaedong is covering with creep spread, and he has 3 queens to push the creep spread out. So it's kind of like it's kind of a more aggressive 3rd base for the Zerg to take, but at the same time it's less viable, or it's less vulnerable to both drops and to the terrain abusing. And we see here Tasia just making a scan just to double check if it's going to be I actually don't know why he does that. Maybe if he's afraid of a roachling all-in or something, or he's just confirming what's happening, because Jaedong, his 5 Mutalisks have just popped, and it's 11 minutes, and Tasia has not seen this yet. He does have turrets in his all of his bases, and he also has 1 next to the production, which is really nice. I like that. Against fast Mutalisks, I think that's really necessary. Otherwise, if you don't have the turret there, you're going to have to leave like 8 Marines there, and that's very inefficient. Against this kind of a fast Mutalisk play, the Zerg player is sacrificing both baneling speed and their upgrades and an economy. Jaedong is on equal workers with Tasia, and that means that Jaedong is going to be very, very far behind in his economy because Tasia has mules to catch up into the production. And so a timing push with the first 2 medevacs, or the first 2 to 4 medevacs, are generally going to do a lot of damage after Mutalisk Crest is done and over with. Some Zerglings getting into the natural here of Tasia. Tasia doing a good job of lifting the bunkers up. And then Jaedong Zerglings trying to get in, trying to get some scouting information. But for the most part, both players know what each other is going to do. We can also see that this creep spread, by taking this 3rd base, Jaedong's emphasizing creep spread on this side of the map. And his creep spread is going to be focused more here than it is pushing out here and here. Notice he has 1 tumor here. Why does he only have 1 active tumor? I guess Tasia must have killed those tumors, but he has 1 active tumor here. His queens are going to be putting down some more creep tumors, and he only has 1 active creep tumor here, and he's 3 over here. And as we can see from Tasia's point of view, the creep spread is already up to his 3rd base. Tasia also taking the 3rd base that is closest to his enemy, so he's not taking this base. I guess this base is a lot more easily susceptible to counterattacks, so Tasia's taking this base. And also, if you put a reinforcement line over here or over here, it's a lot easier to reinforce this area than it is this area. And at the same time, if you're doing a push, you can also rally your reinforcements over here on the minimap, and it'll also protect your 3rd base. And that's why Tasia also doesn't need a bunker immediately. He can kind of delay that because his units are already in the vicinity to protect against any possible attacks. We see here Tasia, he's doing a scan to clear out the creep. It's right before centrifugal hooks are done. I think even though it's a very, very close timing, I think Tasia is going to be able to be or any Terran player really, if you're doing a 3 command center build with the first 2 medevac pressure with stim marines, 16 stim marines, you're going to be able to lay down a scan and clear at least a set of creep tumors. Jaedong, very good Zerg player, he's replanting them like he should be. If a Zerg player doesn't replant the creep tumors, it just gives you an advantage because it's something the Zerg player isn't doing. That's very that has a lot more. It has a lot more. There's a lot more pros for doing that as a Zerg player than there are for not doing that, because it really screws with the Terran player's map control and also ability to push, because you never want to push on creep. As we see here, Tasia's upgrades. Since Jaedong delayed the upgrades in favor of Mutalisk, Tasia's upgrades are going to be ahead. And what he's doing here is with his 6 Hellions, he's going to be poking into the possible 4th base location just to check for the 4th base. Jaedong's 4th base is also going to be extremely late as well, and I really want to emphasize that too. Jaedong, he has 2 hatches, and then he has 1 layer. He doesn't even have a macro hatchery right now. That's how much stuff he sacrificed to get both 12 or 15 Mutalisks out, 3 on the way and 12 already out, and a very fast, or just getting them out very fast. So not only has he sacrificed his upgrades and bailing speed and an economy, he's also sacrificed 2 additional hatcheries, his 4th base. It's 13 minutes in and Jaedong hasn't taken his 4th base already. Jaedong's already lost a significant supply, but that's not that big of a deal. It just puts Tasia in a slight advantage because Tasia did a little bit of fancy micro targeting down the banelings and getting some good trades while Jaedong's speed had not finished yet. But so I just want to emphasize, getting all of these Mutalisks out, even though it's scary because the Zerg player is going to get his Mutalisk flock up, that critical number up a lot faster. Jaedong is sacrificing a lot, and by not having a macro hatch, by not having a 4th base, it means that his engagements are going to be, even if you trade evenly, they're going to favor Tasia in the long run, because Tasia has not made any sacrifices to his production. He has full production going right now. He has 9 Marines producing and 2 Widow Mines and 2 Medevacs. He's going to be putting down a 2nd factory and 3 more barrackses. And he's going to reach 3-3 sooner than Jaedong as well. And he already has a significant 2-2 upgrade advantage as well. So we see here Tasia, he has the 2 Widow Mines here in case for counterattacks, and his army, he's basically just waiting out to be max. He doesn't have to do any sort of big pressure right now because Jaedong's 4th base, when Tasia poked with the 6 Hellions, the 4th base was not down, so that Jaedong wasn't, even though the 4th base is late, it also means that Jaedong isn't overextending his map control, so that it's 1 less base to defend. And Jaedong, he obviously is low on units. He only has 13 Banelings and 55 Zerglings. Tasia's army looks a lot scarier than Jaedong's army currently is, and we also see that reflected in the supply count as well. So Tasia right here, did he scan? Yeah, he scans for 4th base because he's kind of confused. Since he didn't see the 4th base going down there, he's scanning over here in case Jaedong's taking that 4th base. He doesn't see it at all. So he knows he's in a good position because of how delayed the fourth base is. Jaedong trying to do a counterattack over there. And what we see Jaedong doing here is, with his units, I'm just going to have it on X2 and then I'll rewind to watch Taeja's point of view. But what Jaedong's doing here is, he's leaving his Mutalisks and he's waiting for the Terran player to push out with his units so that the Mutalisks can do a counterattack. As soon as Taeja starts to move on creep, Jaedong's Mutalisks start going into position and they're going to start to do a ton of potential damage to this mineral line, but Taeja's reinforcements are able to drive it away. At the same time, Taeja, he sends a marine here to scout. He double confirms that there is a fourth base because there's no reason why the Zerg shouldn't have a fourth base. Jaedong just made it especially late because he had so many Mutalisks. And Taeja's now pushing on creep, and he's starting to trade pretty cost efficiently because Jaedong's army simply isn't as big as Taeja's. Taeja has 7 less SCVs and his army is a lot. Well, I'm just gonna say it's bigger. It's not significantly bigger. It's just bigger. So that trades in a straight up engagement are gonna work in Taeja's favor, and that's why we see Taeja pushing on creep right now because Taeja sees how late Jaedong's fourth base is. He doesn't have the mineral line going. He doesn't have the gases going, and Jaedong still does not have a macro hatch either. And he's gonna be competing against Taeja's full production, and I think, since Taeja's realizing how late this fourth base is, he's pushing on creep on purpose to force an engagement, and even if he trades slightly cost efficiently, it's going to take a lot more resources for Jaedong to replenish this army, that army, than it is for Taeja to replenish his army. So that's why Taeja's really looking for an engagement. He's really looking to force the issue here. Alright, so now we're going back to Taeja's point of view. Just showed you guys that the Mutalisks are over here and they're waiting for Taeja to push on to creep and to kind of catch the army out of position. But what Taeja does really well is that he has this reinforcement point over here, so that even if the Mutalisks, like the Mutalisks are coming to attack now, but since Taeja didn't see the Mutalisks over here, he knows that there's a possibility that the Mutalisks could be counterattacking in these locations. So Taeja leaves his reinforcement rally at a very safe, respectable distance rather than reinforcing his army by having his reinforcement line over here. So by being positionally sound, he's able to instantly stim his reinforcements over to the Mutalisks and clean them up. And Jaedong even loses a couple Mutalisks, 2 Mutalisks, which is not what you want to do as the Zerg player at all. That's a very, very big investment lost for Jaedong, especially since his fourth base is not going up just yet. It's a very, very late fourth base, and that's very important to ID. And since Taeja's IDing that, and he's also about to be maxed, he's going to be forcing the engagement. So he does some clearing creep out right before he maxes out, and he also has, he's basically split up his army into 2 parts, one over here and one over here, just to like kind of protect against the Mutalisks. And he also has 2 Widow Mines over there to do a lot of damage against the Mutalisks and essentially shut them down. And now Taeja, after the Mutalisks threat is dealt with, he's going to be pushing out with the rest of his army and grouping it together. And we see here he's up in supply. He has a lot of units, and that's one of the big reasons why he's able to win this fight. That and the fact that his Widow Mines are very well spread out. There's a group here and then there's a group there. So this group gets off a okay amount of shots. I mean, they weren't money shots by any means, but this group over here, Taeja kind of baited Jaedong into attacking off of creep, and that's one of the tragic weaknesses of a Zerg, is that you can almost never win an engagement off of creep, especially against an even / slightly stronger Zerg army. And after this engagement, Taeja is up 30 supply in army, or yeah, in army, basically. So he has a very big advantage now, and like I said earlier, Jaedong, even though he has his fourth base up, he doesn't have a macro hatch, he doesn't have his fourth base mining, so he doesn't have a lot of minerals available to him. So that engagement cost Jaedong a lot more than did Taeja. We see Jaedong's standing army is a lot smaller, and he only has 34 Zerglings, rather than the 50 plus Zerglings that you normally see when a macro hatch is being transfused or injected at the same time. So we see here Taeja, he's going to be waiting for the rest of his reinforcements coming in. He wants to camp right off of the creep spread and force engagements on creep while pushing a small force of his army onto creep to clear the creep spread. So we see Taeja here, he's on creep for now, but he's like close enough so that he can stim, and as soon as he gets off creep, then the Zergling or the Banelings lose their bonus speed. So that's all really TvZ wants to do, is to stay right on the edge of the creep spread and slightly just kind of push forward and slowly strangle the Zerg. We see here Jaedong forcing the Widowmine shots out. TvZ, he's being very patient. He's still keeping this significant portion of his army outside of the creep spread, and he's still spreading his army out pretty well, even though it's on creep. But the most important thing is to keep a bunch of his army off of creep spread. Jaedong knows he's in trouble. He knows he's down supply and he took a bad engagement, so he really needs to force the issue and try to get a good counterattack going off. Once again, we see TvZ, as soon as he goes on creep, he starts to spread, and he gets off creep immediately with a very big chunk of his army. This many units are off creep. That's 24. That's like 30 Marines right there that's off of creep. And even though he goes slightly on creep, he goes right off creep. And now all of these units that are passing this line right here are going off creep. All of those Banelings go off creep. And that's the difference between getting a bunch of Baneling shots and weakening this Marine count and being able to clean up a weaker Marine count and having, let's say, like 10 plus Marines alive at the end of engagement, because the Banelings weren't fast enough off of creep to take the win. So TvZ's very good player at forcing battles slightly off creep, and now he's able to get the third base, and with that he's up 50 supply, and he's going to be able to win the game relatively easily from here. And TvZ, he's going in, he knows that every single unit that Jaedong loses is 10 times more important than every unit that TvZ loses. TvZ doesn't even lose his entire army, and he goes in with his Widow Mines, Jaedong GG's, and the game is over. So, some important things to note here is that TvZ's third base appears to be this one, and if the Zerg player spawned over here, I'm sure it would still have been this one. This seems to be the easier third base to take in regards to this one, because it's a lot more closer to the potential mineral or potential rally point. And TvZ, he's rallying his units over here to his third base as a forward rally point, and then he can move the units here over to here. And what that does is that keeps both his third base safe and his main army from being depleted of units. So that brings us to a close for this first game. Jaedong, he did kind of a cheesy build by sacrificing a lot of economy and tech to get those Mutalisks out, and those Mutalisks didn't really pay for themselves because of TvZ's superior positioning. And now we're going to take a look at a second game by TvZ, and this time it's versus Solar. This was also on, what's it called? Catalena. Almost forgot what this map was called. And we're going to we're going to take a look at the main view. So we're going to take a look at the overlord positioning here. Solar, once again, he's going just like Jaedong did. Solar is also he's going to go straight for this line over here, so that as soon as TvZ's barracks is done, when he starts to scout, like if he uses his SCV to scout the outside of his main base, he's going to be able to see the overlord. I think the reason why Solar does this instead of straight beelining over here is to scout for proxy raxes in the middle. Notice how he goes right up to the middle and he sees nothing, and then he's going to scout towards this location. Slight overlord deviation path. So that means that this overlord's going to be slightly slower reaching the party over here. And so if you sent out the SCV, then you wouldn't have seen it immediately. That's why even though there's variations in the overlord scouting path, what I like to do is I'll send the SCV like over here, and then I'll send it around the corner just in case the overlord pathing did something weird, such as scouting for proxy 2 raxes that some Zerg players do. And basically what it does is he would have been able to see the overlord at this point, and then he would have been able to know that the Zerg player started over here. So he wouldn't have had to send out an SCV. But we see TvZ, he's opening up with a Marine first. It's kind of designed to catch these overlords. He wanted to catch this overlord. He actually wanted to catch this overlord first before it perks up in the natural, before catching this overlord. But unfortunately, none of the overlords are going to get shut down this time. Alright, so overlords and Zerg's going for speed. We take a look at Tasia. He's going for double gas, and he's also going for a starport as well, but this time he's going to be getting cloak banshees. And this marine serves a double purpose. So even though it was only able to weaken the overlord, this marine's going to be patrolling this area over here to deny the overlord that's always going to be outside of the main base from scouting what Tasia's doing. And Tasia is doing that because he's going to be going for a cloak banshee build. And if the Zerg player isn't able to scout this build in time, or like normally if you sacrifice the overlord over here, even with full health you'd be able to see this, you'd be able to get pretty far into the Terran's main, but because Tasia was able to do some damage early on by having the marine over here, this overlord is not going to be able to make it far enough into Tasia's main base to be able to scout the cloak banshee going on. So there's the Solar is forced to not send this overlord in, otherwise he's basically going to lose it for free. And we see here Tasia, he's going for a cloak banshee opener. As we see here, Solar has no idea what's going on. He doesn't even know the starport's happening. And at least Jaedong was able to know that there was a starport, and he was able to make one spore because of it. But because this overlord hasn't seen anything, and that marine's doing a really good job of denying overlord vision, he has no idea that there's cloak on the way and that there's already one banshee out. Otherwise spores would have been started, but as we see here, there's 0 spores. There's 4 zerglings, so Solar is playing extremely greedy with the drones. And alright, so we see here now Tasia's revealing his first banshee, which is still okay. Like ideally you want to wait as long as possible, but in this case it's still okay because now the spores are just starting to go up, so this banshee's going to have pretty good reign of doing a ton of damage before the spores are actually up. And there's no spore in the third base just yet, just because of the timing that Solar wasn't able to see the cloak banshee build because of this marine. And one of the big benefits of this map and a lot of the other new maps I've noticed is that it's very easy to deny overlord scouting, because as we know, the first 2 overlords are going to be over here, and if you send in this overlord, it's not really going to see anything. It's going to maybe see like if the gas is taken or not, and then if it like flies in, maybe some hidden buildings there, but it's not really going to see much. Every good Terran player is going to have his buildings right over here. That's the sweet spot. And so this overlord, it's up to this guy's job to try to go in and scout as much as possible. But having a marine here, or even 2 marines there, if you only make 1 reaper, he only made 1 reaper. Did he lose a 1? No, he didn't lose 1. Okay, so he only made 1 reaper. But having like even 2 marines here, just patrolling the perimeter of here, will shut down an overlord before it's able to see the tech over here. So you can hide a second factory, you can hide an armory, you can hide a 3rd command center, and that requires different reactions from the Zerg player for each of the different builds that I just listed off. And so we see here, since Tasia was able to deny Solar's vision of the Hellion Banshee opener, Solar is kind of caught off guard. This queen, that's a mistake by Solar, not keeping it on the creep. Tasia's doing a good job weakening that 1 queen. He doesn't want to dive into this main base to try to kill it. But now Cloak is out, and Solar, he's forced to have a spore. He built the spore over here, and then he was forced to move it to his 3rd base. Otherwise he would have lost that 3rd base, because the 2 banshees would be more than enough firepower to force a cancel on any spore crawlers building at the 4th base. And now Solar is in a lot of trouble because he doesn't have an extra spore crawler here, and these queens are just gonna die. They're not able to do any damage. And this Hellion Banshee timing attack, because it was unscouted, because of the layout of the map, that Tasia is able to deny a lot of scouting information from Solar, and Solar's not able to make intelligent decisions based on what he scouts. Tasia's able to do a significant amount of damage. He's already killed 10 drones. He's about to kill a ton of workers. Tasia doing a really good job of using one of the a good positioning behind the mineral line. It really limits the surface area that the Zerglings can get around the Hellion force. And I'll rewind that just so we can see that in a more fluid pace. So the Hellions are over here. The Banshees forcing back the queens. So by forcing back the queens, you know that the Hellions are going to have a much easier time kind of hiding behind something here and just limiting the space that the melee units can attack. It's not as effective if the queens were going to be over here attacking the Hellions, but since the Banshees are pushing back the queens, the Hellions, they're able to just kind of camp between a pretty strong spot between the mineral line and the main base. And like just it's this area right here that's the sweet spot. And over here, this is a lot of Zerglings. In an open area, this many Zerglings would have been able to take down this force, but because of this closed area, Solar is not able to break this little entrenchment that Tasia has made. And these Banshees, even though Tasia lost one Banshee, he's killed all of the queens. Solar has one queen here that just popped out. He has a second queen over here that's half health. There's almost nothing he can do that can contest against the Hellion Banshee play. But Solar is going to stabilize because Tasia only has made 6 Hellions and 2 Banshees and has not gone to mech. Instead, we see Tasia. He's transitioning into a bio-opener. He's his 3rd command center, and he has his double engineering base on the way. So this is a much more, I would say, standard game. This is what you would expect to see on a map like this. A 3rd base going down, the double evolution chambers, speed, a relatively fast layer. No, actually, more of a relatively slow layer. The Spire, the Mutalisks were out by this time when Jaedong was playing versus Tasia, but the Spire's not even halfway done yet, and at the 10:23 mark. So we also see here that Tasia, since he's recognized that he's seen the double evolution chambers, he's seen the fast 3rd base, he's seen the investment that Solar's put into army, he doesn't need to add the fast missile turrets like he did versus Jaedong. And once again, we see Tasia taking the kind of more forward 3rd base. This time, though, we see Solar taking the more traditional 3rd base, and he's going to be trying to push his creep spread out over here. Compared to Jaedong, who took the 3rd base over here. So right now, Tasia has done a significant amount of damage. He's killed 10 drones. He's killed God knows how many queens and Zerglings. And so this, by doing early damage like that, this medevac force with about it should have 16 Marines. It's alright. Alright, so that's like 17 Marines and 2 medevacs. Is going to do a lot of damage because Solar has been delayed in both his economy and his military. His army has been kind of limited to its very small size. He only has 17 Zerglings out and 6 queens. He had to sacrifice building additional units that he would have wanted to build at this time in order to get his drone count up to kind of a better saturation that you need to fight against 3 command centers. And we see here Tasia picking off another queen, picks off a second queen, picks off an overlord, and all of this damage is because it's just a snowball effect of what Tasia was able to do earlier on with the Hellion Banshee harass, because he wasn't able to, or because Solar wasn't able to see what Tasia was up to. And that's kind of a sloppy shot, letting the Banelings kill the majority of those Marines. If he still had those Marines alive, Solar would have lost the 3rd base and the game would have been over by now. But these Marines are still alive. They're still doing damage. Not as much damage as one might like, but still enough damage to make this attack very cost efficient for Tasia. And now we see Tasia, he's rallying the rest of his units to a forward rally point as 3rd base, like we saw in the last game. When he's on the offensive, when he's on the defensive, he'll keep his army over here in this area, and then he'll rally over here. When he's attacking, like over here, instead of rallying all of his barracks and production buildings, it's kind of weird having the mines rallied over here. But instead of having all of his buildings rallied over here to his army, he has them over here so that he can manually select them and choose when the reinforcements are going to reinforce the battle. Just doing some fancy marine micro to kill the Banelings off. And these slow Banelings, they're really not cost efficient for Solar at all, as we see here. And now Tasia, he's going to be able to take very, very cost efficient fights. Solar, he's in a very big world of hurt right now. Tasia, now he's advanced his rally point up to this point right outside of the creep line because he's seen that Solar's 3rd base was barely saturated. He knows that he's been able to knock off a lot of Solar's economy. The resources lost have been significant. Solar's army is like just minuscule compared to Tasia's. So Tasia knows that there's no option for a counterattack that Solar has that Jaedong would have done in the game before, and so he's able to safely rally all of his reinforcements over here, and he's going to push this fight as much as he can. He's going to try to milk as much cost efficiency out of these units, and it's going to be a lot. Tasia just has overwhelming numbers. We can see it in the supply. He's 30 up in supply. His army is almost tripling the size of Solar's, and good game is going to be called relatively shortly right here. So it wasn't that big of a macro game. There it is. I gotta have hotkeys to make it easier to tap between the different views. But basically, my assessment of Catalena is that it seems like a pretty fair TvZ map. There's a lot of different options that both players have in terms of taking different bases, in terms of where your units are able to attack and unit positioning in general. There's a lot of dead airspace in the main too. We weren't able to see that come into play in these two games. What we were able to see was the good job that Tasia did by denying the scouting of Solar and using that to his advantage. In this case, it was denying the scouting of the Hellion Banshee until it was extremely late. And even though Solar was able to scout it, he scouted it a lot later than he would have liked to, and as a result, he took a lot of damage from that. And that kind of just snowballed into a victory for Tasia. And we also saw that Tasia, he really likes to take that third base, and the reason being because it's a lot easier to keep it safe. He's able to rally his reinforcements right through that third base, so not only does it keep it safe, but also lets Tasia be more aggressive compared to taking the other base. And yeah, I guess that pretty much that's gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys liked it, and I hope it gives you a better game plan or a better idea of how to go about playing a TvZ game on Catalena, and how you can use the map to your advantage, and the fact that even though it hasn't been played that much, try to use it to your advantage. The advantage that it hasn't been played that much is what I was trying to say. It took very long to say. So yeah, and trying to think of if I missed anything here. Don't think I did. If you guys have any specific videos that you would like me to go over, just leave a comment and link below, and I will get to it as soon as possible. Other than that, tomorrow I'm going to be playing in this Hawks Invitational casted by Base Trade TV. I'm going to play versus Suppy. So hopefully I'll be able to put up some pretty good games. It's going to start at about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 12 p.m. Pacific Time. So if you guys are here, definitely check that out. You'll be able to see me play some pretty cool styles. I can't really go too much into what I'm going to do because I want to keep it kind of secret, but they'll definitely be entertaining games, to say the least. So that wraps up this video for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and take care. I'll see you all in the next video.